Hi everybody, Happy New Year. I hope you were all well. You've kept safe and healthy, or as safely and as healthy as possible during this Christmas New Year period. It's quite gloomy here, so that New Year's going to be a bit of a washout, but it is what it is. So as you know, because I did a community post the other day, that I am filming a series of videos at the moment. So you're probably going to see me wearing the same outfit for the next like 3 or 4 videos. But I'm filming them in a block. So there you go. So you'll be getting things like my review of the year, my book haul for the new year, which is pretty big, and I'm concerned about where I'm going to fit it all, but and obviously announcing what's happening in 2022 and the first 5 books of 2022 I'm going to be reading. But before we get to that, I need to review my last read of 2021, which was Hag-seed by Margaret Atwood. Now, I've only ever read one book by Margaret Atwood previously, which was, of course, The Handmaid's Tale, as stickered here. Well, it's not stickered, it's actually printed onto the thing. I wish it wasn't, because it disrupts the eye that you look at, because the red circle. But anyway, they wanted it on there, so they had to put it on there. So I've only ever read The Handmaid's Tale before. That is a heavy book. So I didn't know exactly what I was going into, but I knew her writing style and everything, and I was like, okay, we'll see how we go with this. Now, what happened was that 5 years ago, for the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death, and life and death, because he died on his birthday, a series of authors were commissioned to write modern interpretations of his various novels. Margaret Atwood was approached, and she agreed to write a modern version of The Tempest. Now, The Tempest is also one of my favourite Shakespeare plays. I adore that play. It's his last play. It should get more attention than it does, even though it is, people do write about it and there's productions on it, various times and everything, in comparison to others like, Macbeth and Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. It doesn't get as many productions and such of it, which is a real shame. It's such an interesting play. And so the fact that Margaret Atwood wrote this, when my colleague Eleanor told me about this, because I hadn't heard about it, I was like, oh, okay. So this was only written 5 years ago. And the last book of hers that I had read was Handmaid's Tale, which was written in, I think it was the mid to late 80s. So a lot of time between them. So I was like, okay, I'll give this a go. I'll see what I think. And I have to say, I bloody loved this book. I do think, though, it's going to be a bit of a Marmite book, and I will explain why. But overall, as someone who is a fan of The Tempest, who likes Margaret Atwood's writing, and obviously Shakespeare as well, and totally open to various different interpretations of his plays, this just fit me like a glove. I'm so glad that my colleague Eleanor recommended it to me, and when I get back to work next week, I will be contacting her straight away, going thank you, because let's face it, I've had a run of bad or okay books lately, haven't I? I haven't had anything that's really shone out for me for a while. So to get this as my last book of the year, I am very, very grateful to have been recommended it. So, in case you don't know what this is about, we are following a guy called Felix, who is our lead character, the equivalent of Prospero in Tempest. And he is a theatre director in Canada, and he's directing a festival, and everything is going okay. He is in a very bad state of mind, though, because he has lost his 3-year-old daughter recently, and his wife died in childbirth, so he is completely alone. And then he finds out that he has lost his job as director. A very horrible person screwed him over, basically. Like in the Tempest, Prospero gets screwed over, and he decides, right, I'm going to go away. I'm going to change my name to Mr. Duke, which I love, because Prospero in the Tempest is a duke, and he gets kicked out, loses his position, and he goes off and crashes onto an island. And so Felix decides that he's going to go away. He's changing his name. He's going to start afresh, and circumstance with a prison correctional production that he gets caught up with means that he crossed paths with the people who screwed him over by having him lose his job at the festival, and he plots his revenge. So that's the gist of the story, and that kind of obviously follows the Tempest, where Prospero loses his position as a duke. He crashes onto this island with his 15-year-old daughter Miranda. Well, she was only 3 at the time. It's 12 years have passed, and so she's now 15 years old, and he happens to see a ship nearby which contains the people who screwed him over. So he causes a storm to shipwreck, and them to crash onto the island, and he starts using his magic abilities that he's learnt on this island to teach them a lesson and get revenge. So there we go. So that's the gist of the Shakespeare play and this book. I loved this book. I thought it was very cleverly put together. Now, what she does so brilliantly with this book that I just want to make very clear is that anybody, whether you know the Tempest well, you know it okay, or don't know it at all, can pick up this book and read it. Because Felix, being a director, and he's going into his correctional facility, and he is getting people, the prison inmates to put on the play, you actually are reading and attending, as it were, these sessions where they talk about characters, they talk about location, they talk about plot, they break things down, they figure out what the themes and everything. So if you don't know the Tempest, you can learn about it as you're reading the book. Gold star, Margaret Atwood, for doing that, making it completely inclusive for absolutely everybody. I was going to say everyone and everybody, and I kind of didn't. Inclusivity, brilliant. What I loved also is that loss and such is a massive part of the Tempest, and forgiving people, forgiving yourselves. Mental health is also a theme in there, with Prospero and redemption and such. And all of these she plays very beautifully. But I also love that she did little subtle things like water, because of the shipwreck and everything that happens in the Tempest, and they're on an island. Water is really prominent in the play. It is the element that brings them all together and gets played with and keeps them trapped in their place. And of course, being in a jail, you can't really, you're not going around water and such. So what she does is that she plays with weather. She talks about the sounds of puddles, the splish, splash, and everything. And so water is constantly still alive, and an element around all the various characters, and especially following Felix throughout the course of the book. So you still have that character. The island itself in the play, The Tempest, is a character, and she does that, brings that kind of connection and such with the prison. So you're hearing the doors and the textures of things, which is reflected in Shakespeare's play, which, so the sand, the bark of the wood, and everything. It's just fantastically put together like that. I also wanted to give a shout out to her using Miranda and Ariel and kind of combining them together, because the characters of Miranda and Ariel in Tempest, Miranda is the 15-year-old daughter of Prospero, and Ariel is this spirit who is basically a servant to Prospero, but he does allow Ariel to kind of go free and do what he wants, but when he's called for, he must come to Prospero and do what Prospero says. And Ariel begs for liberation through the play, and kind of says, look, I'll make a deal with you. I do what you say, when this is all over, I get to go free, kind of thing. And of course, in this book, as I said, Miranda died when she was 3 years old, right near the beginning of the book. And so Miranda's not there, but she is there, because as he has gone into this inward state, as it were, and become this new man who's plotting revenge for 12 years, he imagines Miranda still with him. She grows up. And so by the time we meet up with him again, she is this 15-year-old ghost that lives with him, who kind of follows him around. But again, she remains kind of locked in the house, but as time goes on, she starts to filter into the jail and such. And so she is flitting around, kind of like Ariel. And you know that there comes a point where he has to let go. And Prospero does as well. He realizes, I have kept her like my doll, my possession, for these 12 years on this island, and I have to let her go. She's becoming a woman. And that link, and using kind of Ariel as well, the liberation, I just loved that so much. It was just beautifully put together. Now, you're probably wondering why it's called Hag-seed. So throughout all of Shakespeare's plays, he likes to swear, but it's not swearing in ways that, if you've heard me curse enough on this channel, kind of modern swearing. It's his own kind of constructed swearing, and saying various nasty things about people. And one of the terms that he uses towards Caliban is Hag-seed. Now, Caliban is this creature on the island who is very much looked down on. He's a slave. He's this like webbed-fingered, webbed-feet creature, and he's described as being very fish-like, and Prospero doesn't like him. He's just, it's kind of a theme of colonialism is brought into with his character, because Prospero didn't know he was on the island when he arrived. He thought there was no one there, and he finds this creature, and he actually teaches Caliban English, and so Caliban becomes his slave. And the Hag-seed means he was born of a hag. He is the seed, this father semen, and born of a hag, so he is the Hag-seed. And it's this terrible insult. And there is always this thing of the origins of Caliban. His mother is explained as being a witch called Sycorax. But yeah, the question about his father, and it actually, in the discussions that happen with the prisoners and such about the character of Caliban, the question gets asked, is it possible that he's Prospero's son? And it's a question I haven't really thought of before. I don't think so, but I suppose it could be a possibility. And I just love the fact that a play that I know I really like, and this book comes along and asks a question that puts it in a different perspective for me. I loved that. I thought it was brilliant. So Margaret Atwood, once again, I loved the different perspectives and such. And in a way, as explained in this book and explained by Felix at the end, every single plot event, the island and the play itself, is a prison for Prospero. And at the very end, he begs us, now he throws his arms out and says to the audience, now set me free. That's his final line. And So to have it set in a jail makes such perfect sense. I just feel like she's ticked every box for me for an adaptation. It was just sheer brilliance. Oh God. And there's Scotland for Sunday quoted as saying, an absolute triumph, ravishing. I am not ashamed to say that I didn't just have a lump in my throat by the end of Hag-seed. I had tears on the fringed curtains of mine eyes. And I'd agree with that. I sat and read the bulk of this yesterday because I've been busy, Christmas, New Year, seeing my relatives and everything. I'd read a little bit, and then yesterday I was like, right, I've got a full day to myself. I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to read a bunch of it, and then I can finish it over the weekend. I ended up reading like the bulk of this book. And now when I say the bulk, I think I may have read about 50 pages before I started yesterday. I read the rest of that book in one sitting, and I loved every minute of it. I thought it was brilliant. Now, I did mention before that there might be some people who won't like it. It's had very, very mixed reviews. Some people didn't like it because it was quite different from her other works. Some people didn't like it because of the way that it was constructed, which I thought was actually a great strength. Ooh, sorry, just had to deal with a phone call. And some people didn't like it because of characters and such. And so I was just like, you know what? I get it, because it is so different, and you're following a play being directed. It's, although we follow Felix around, at the same time, we don't have that same kind of character interaction. We don't necessarily go to the depths of people's characters and everything. You don't have that same characterization. So I can understand that being a problem. Atmospheric wise, okay, it wasn't the most atmospheric book either, but I didn't mind that. It totally worked for me. Some people didn't like the narrative as well, in regards, the plot and everything, and it does kind of feel a little bit like when everything kind of bangs together, it's just kind of a bit like, okay. And then they kind of, do the after party, as it were. And then it was just kind of like, oh, right, okay. I totally get why people had issue with that as well. But I think overall I don't know if those people necessarily understood about the Tempest, or maybe I see it in a completely different way, is that when Prospero throughout, he wants revenge and everything, he comes to the realization that maybe revenge isn't what I needed. Maybe I need to close this chapter. I need to move on. I need to give my daughter the freedom that she needs. And I need to say I'm done with this part. So it doesn't necessarily have to have a big like bang, yes, I got my revenge, kind of ending as some people I think expected it to be. Because that's not what Prospero is. He has these series of prisons that he's built around himself in various situations, and he just needs to let it go. And so the final chapter of this book with Miranda, I just loved it. I loved this so much. I'm going to do a very, very quick reading, because I know I'm 20 minutes in, because I didn't do a reading last time, and I feel like I should. So this is the various people at the prison talking about the character of Ariel. Oh, I forgot to mention, one of the rules that Felix has is that there can be no swearing amongst them when they're developing the play and everything, unless it has been written by Shakespeare in The Tempest. So they use various Shakespearean swear words a lot, because they can't, and if they break a rule, then they've got to donate something to like a swear jar. It's a cute, funny little thing for them to do. So, I am not being a fairy, says Peapod. He'd been Lady Macbeth in Macbeth and Richmond in Richard III. He's a sweet talker with, according to him, a bevy of devoted beauties waiting for him once he gets out. Not being a girl either. That's from Shiv. He was a Somali drug gang connection and was caught in a big bust a few years back. He looks around the room for support. Various nods and mutterings of agreements. No one wants either of these parts. Not the Ariel, not the Miranda. Felix has a potential rebellion on his hands, but he's anticipated it. He's faced the gender issue in other plays, but those female characters have been grown women with scythers or downright nasty, and thus much easier to accept. The witches in Macbeth had been a pushover. The guys had no objection to playing evil crones because they were monsters, not actual women. And Calpurnia was a minor. Lady Macbeth was even more of a monster than the witches. Peapod said she was just like his mother, and had enacted her to great effect. Lady Anne in Richard III was angry and spiteful. In fact, she was a spitter. Civ had made a real meal of it. Miranda, however, was not a monster, or a grown woman. She's a girl, a vulnerable girl. Any man playing her would lose status in a disastrous way. He'd become the butt and target. Playing a girl, he'd risk being treated as one. It would be ruinous for Ferdinand as well, having to pitch those swooning love speeches to a surly fellow inmate. Let's get the girl thing out of the way right now, says Felix. First, no one in this room will be playing Miranda. Miranda's a sweet, innocent 15-year-old girl. I can't see any of you being very convincing with that. The grunts of relief are audible. Okay, good, says Civ. But if nobody is here doing it, then who is? I shall engage, Felix pauses, rearranges his language. I'm hiring a professional actress, he says. An actual woman, he adds, so they are truly grasped to the point. She's coming in here, says Peapod. To be in our play? They look at one another, incredulous. Already the Tempest is more appealing to some of them. You can get those chicks to do that. Wonderboy, the sole icon man, speaks up. I don't think it's right that you bring a young girl in here. You're putting her in a weird position. Not that I'd lay a finger on her myself, he says, but I'm just saying. Yeah, you fucking A-word, said a voice from the back, laughter. She'll be acting the part of a young girl, said Felix. I didn't say she would be a young girl. Not that she'll be old, he adds to counter the expression of dismay. Consider her participation as a privilege. Any trouble, pestering, groping, pinching, dirty talk, and so forth, she's gone. And so are you. I expect you all to behave like professional actors I consider you to be. Not that professional actors fail to indulge in the pinching and groping, he reminds himself, but no need to share that reflection. Some lucky stiff's going to be playing Ferdy. What's his name? Said Legs. Let's get those hot close-up scenes. Stiff is right, said Peapod. Guy's going to be so stiff he'll be frozen, murmuring, chuckling. We'll deal with that when we come to it, said Felix. It's all very good, said Bent Pencil, the embezzling accountant. His stage name has been conferred upon him by condemned consent. He wasn't too pleased about it at first. He tried to insist on something more dignified, such as numbers. He wanted to preserve his feeling of superiority, but he's come to accept Bent Pencil, because what choice does he have? Bent Pencil played Cassius in Julius Caesar, and is stickler on details, often tediously so. Felix finds him a trial. He always wants to show how well prepared he is. Gonzalo, he thinks, Bent Pencil is excellent for it. That's all very well, Bent Pencil goes on, but you haven't addressed the issue of the Ariel issue. Yeah, the fairy, says Legs. We'll discuss that on Friday, said Felix. Now, your first written exercise, I want you to go through the text very carefully and make a list of all the curse words in the play. Those are the only curse words that we'll be using in this room. Anyone caught using those other words, the F-bomb and so on, loses a point off their total. Counting of points is by the honour system, but we are one other's witnesses. Understood? Grins from the veterans. Felix always sets a class challenge like this. We're playing for cigarettes, asked Peapod. As usual. Of course, said Felix. Once you have your list, pick 10 of those curse words and memorise them, and then learn how to spell them. Those will be your special swear words. You can apply them in this class to anyone and anything. If you don't know what they mean, I'll be happy to tell you. Ready, steady, go. Heads are bent, notebooks are open, playbooks are consulted, pencils busy themselves. Your profanity, thinks Felix, has oft been your whoreson hag-born progenitor of literacy, along with your whoreson cigarettes. May the red plague rid them. I love that. I love the discussion. I loved, the setting the challenge. I loved the talk between the characters. It flowed really easy. It was very conversational. I just thought it was brilliant. Overall, loved Hag-seed by Margaret Atwood. Now, there are a couple of productions that I would recommend at the Tempest if you want to check them out. Oh, and in the back of this, just so you know, you get a full, I think it's about 4 or 5 page description of the play and all the events in the Tempest, should you want to read that Margaret wrote. So the first is the Simon Russell Beale production, The Tempest, which 5 years ago, I had to check, me and my sister reviewed together, because the day that we saw it, it was absolutely stunning, this production, and I got it on Blu-ray as soon as it came out and watch it often. I love it. With Simon Russell Beale, my favourite Shakespearean actor ever, playing Prospero. So there's the cover if you want to check it out. And the other one is an audio production by the Archangel series. Now, you can't buy these on CD anymore, but you can still download them through Audible and iTunes. And basically, the Archangel collection fully dramatised all of Shakespeare's plays with these fabulous English Shakespearean actors. And this is the one for The Tempest, and it's really great. So I'd recommend that too. So, time for my questions. My last time asking this year. So, would I read this again? Yes, I definitely would. Would I recommend this to anyone? I definitely would. Shakespeare fan or not Shakespeare fan. Really easy to follow, great read, play is explained throughout, and I thought it was just wonderful. Would I read any more of Margaret's works? Of course I would, definitely. And given how this felt so different from Handmaid's Tale, I'm really intrigued to see what her other books are like, because I only literally have Handmaid's Tale and this. So yeah, I'm glad it wasn't dark like Gilead, because I couldn't go into that headspace again. But I thought it was wonderful. So it's my thoughts on Hag-seed by Margaret Atwood. Have you read this book? I love to hear what you think. You leave me a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to you. I'll let you decide. And then I will be back with my various videos rounding off the year and announcing my plans and my first 5 reads of 2022. All right, guys. Bye.